What is happening, fellow fantasy GMs? I am JJ Wang. He is the bearded one, DJ Dub. And with our powers combined, we are the Fantasy Couriers.
We're gonna do this last week. We decided to push it back, so we talk about a couple other things. We are just over midway through the fantasy football season. That was week 8, and this year, week 14. If you're doing it right, you're going 14 weeks for regular season. Then that gives you the standard fantasy playoffs time. So we're halfway through. So we thought we'd hit a couple midseason MVPs. We're not necessarily looking at like the number one guys, because if we'd have done this and went number one guys, guess what? Over the weekend, it would have been Derrick Henry. Oops. And he wasn't even on my list before as far as midseason MVP. So we're looking more at who are some guys who, either based upon draft position or based upon their performance, have been game changers for fantasy teams. So we're going to have a quarterback, a running back, um, a receiver, and a tight end that we will go through. And I'm going to steal the first because I'm very excited about my quarterback. Was a guy I was right on. He's carried my worst team through the season and that would be Senior Tom Brady this year. Tom Brady is just killing it, killing it. Who would ever think that I'm younger than Tom Brady barely, and I couldn't do well. I couldn't do it anyway because I'm not Tom Brady, but I just wake up with pains that he apparently doesn't have existing. And I mean, he threw for 375 last week. The dude's this year is just putting up numbers. He's already got 2,650 yards and 25 touchdowns halfway. And we're halfway through the NFL season because they haven't had their bye week. So this is literally, so he is on pace for 5,300 yards and 50 touchdowns. Let me say, I believe somebody said he would get 50 touchdowns.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, we still got 8 games to go. I mean, that's a hard pace to keep up. I
I
mean,
mean, I guess he's only got 9 games to go because it's a 17 game this
done
year.
like
Yeah.
9 games. It's only been done what once in the history.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like I said, it's possible, but I mean, who knows? I mean, I don't think we need to sit here and talk about what Brady has done. I mean, everybody knows. I mean, Tom Brady, he's the goat.
Just crazy. Like that. I, I, I sort of tongue in cheek thought he would be good. Like I was like, yeah, he's going to be good this year. I did not think he was going to be. I did because I said it, but it was one of those things where I was like, I'm saying this because my gut wants it to be, or I think it's going to be, and then dude is living up. The cast is looking spectacular, and he is as well. So Tom Brady, you're my midseason MVP. Who's your
Yeah, just
quarterback? Cheater.
I wanted to go with one, but I was just looking at my teams and who on my teams have helped me win so far, and at quarterbacks it's been Josh Allen and Matt Stafford. Stafford's the number 2 quarterback, and Allen's the number 3. We all know what they're doing on their teams. They both got 2,000 yards passing. Around the 20 touchdown mark. They don't throw a lot of interceptions. Allen runs the ball. And if you got them on your team, I mean, it's hard. It'd be hard pressed to say you're not one of the top teams. Um, but yeah, I mean, they've carried me. So thank you guys. As far and I'll just skip
Yeah,
over
jump
here.
in.
I'll just go ahead and skip over to my running back. This is probably one of my favorite players in the league. Um, there were several running backs drafted over him, and he was probably what I think the 8th running back,
Oh
7th,
my God, probably, yeah.
something like that. And he's currently the number 2 running back, which is Austin Eckler. Might be number 1 before long with Derrick Henry. Um, over the last 3 games, he's been really the only one on that team that's been performing. The rest of them have been kind of shaky ever since we made that bold prediction. But I'd like to thank Austin Eckler for everything he's done for me.
Oh, he's not on my team anymore, so he can just stay there. Yeah, my midseason MVP. It's not a guy that is putting up. I was trying to see where he fell. Like he probably falls at about like the 12th or 13th running back here based upon the league. But and he started out kind of slow. So it's James Robinson. The first 2 games were kind of stinky, and then he got rolling for that 5 game stretch where he is carrying owners who did not think that he would, but he's he's consistently getting the touches. He's the only running back. He's the best player on the Jaguars team. And over that 5 game stretch, he has one, two, he has 5 touchdowns. So I guess it was a 4 game stretch. And this week he was until he hurt his ankle, or was it ankle, right?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
he
until
had
he hurt his ankle on that
bruised
play,
he
he was
bruised
looking
heel
solid
work.
still. I mean, he had 4 for 22, and I'm like, oh, he's going to have another great game, and then bam, he's down. So up until that injury, he was trending up extremely. He had the 149-yard game. He's spectacular. He was even getting some catches in all but 2 games. He was getting about 30 yards or so, give or take. But James Robinson's, for me, he's a midseason MVP based upon what you paid for him. You got him in drafts thinking, okay, he's going to play second fiddle to Travis Etienne. You weren't drafted, and then Etienne went down, and you're like, okay, I got James Robinson. He's going to be fine. And I mean, he's turned into a guy that you're like, if needs be, he could be my running back one. You don't want him to be because then you're like, oh, it's James Robinson. But and then you watch him play, the dude in real life, I would say, looks even better than he does in fantasy. So in fantasy, he's getting me my numbers carrying one of my teams to that shouldn't be good to be pretty good. And in real life, the dude is just balling out. And I'm very excited that James Robinson is on one of my teams. I did have to trade him away in a trade I regret now because I got what's his name from the Eagles, the rookie, Devonta Smith for him, which isn't panning out too well.
Well, Jalen Hurts sucks.
Yeah, yeah. So, but now receivers of the year, receiver MVP. My receiver MVP is a guy that I don't like having. I didn't like having at all. He didn't have not a spectacular week, but I always end up with this dude because people don't like him apparently either. That would be Denniston Moore Jr. And to most people, he's known as DJ Moore. And DJ Moore is having quietly a really good year
Yeah, he's
for
top
a
10.
guy that I I ended up drafting. See, in my league, he's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He's 12. So he's the number 12 receiver in the league where I have him, but he's consistent. Like I drafted him basically because he's there a couple rounds too late. So he's getting the targets on his team. He has 10 plus targets in all but 3 games, and in those games it was 8, 8, and 7. So that's still a decent target share for the team, even though his quarterback play is putrid
Awful.
with that horrible, like probably the worst player in NFL history,
I wouldn't go
Sam
that far.
Darnold, who's just terrible. Whoever supports Sam Darnold just should be banned from fantasy sports in for the entire world. But still being able to put up the stat lines he is on a team that's not really voting him. He's got 645 yards, and he's already halfway through the season, almost got his touchdown total for last year. So, but he's been consistent. He's been, if nothing else, fairly consistent this year as being your wide receiver one because nobody is 100% consistent other than who I should have probably put in there. And I want to make sure you didn't put him before I mentioned his name. You did not, which would be Cooper Cup, who's probably who I should have put in there because he's getting ready to eclipse. Probably he's going to tie or eclipse Randy Moss's single season touchdown record. So, but DJ Moore is a guy that I went personal more so than what it should have been, which is probably Cooper Cup.
Yeah, I mean, I like DJ Moore. I mean, I got him in a lot of places. I mean, he's having a solid season. I mean, he's not. If he's your wide receiver one, you're probably in trouble. But I feel like if he's your wide receiver two, I mean, I feel like you're in good shape. And my guy is the guy that was drafted pretty low. I mean, he's had injury concerns. People are kind of scared to have him on their team. I've been scared to have him on my team, and that's Debo. I think this is the first time I've ever had him on a team.
I moved
But
on all my Devos. I
yeah, I
love
mean, he had
Debo.
another 171 yards yesterday. It brings his total to 819 with 4 touchdowns, and he also has one rushing. But he's the focal point of that offense. Nobody else is really doing anything. Of course, we got the tight end. Kittle's been out. He's supposed to come back. Ayuk has been nothing that I thought he was going to be. And he's been consistent with both Garoppolo and Trey Lance. So, I mean, where I got him, I couldn't have asked for anything more out of Debo. He's been pretty much my number one guy. So, thank you,
That's good to
Debo.
know. Take me into my wheelhouse.
Oh
You
yeah,
know how I
we got
love tight ends. They're my favorite players.
we go jump over these tight ends, and this is probably my worst spot. This is probably actually the best tight end that I've gotten in any league which isn't saying much, but it's Dalton Schultz. But he had come out last year when Jarwin got hurt, played really well. I think he had like 4 touchdowns last year. And coming into this year, it was who was going to be the guy, Schultz or Jarwin, and it's been pretty quickly realized that Schultz is the man. Jarwin doesn't get much. Schultz didn't play well last night. I think he only had like 20 yards or something like that. Not the greatest, but overall, I mean, he's the number 5 ranked tight end, and that, if you can pick up the number 5 tight end off the waiver wire anywhere, I mean, that's a great deal. But yeah, thank Dalton Schultz for being a good tight end.
Yeah, my midseason. I mean, obviously, really the midseason MVP tight end should be Kyle Pitts, but most people overpicked him, so I don't know if he'd be valuable. My midseason tight end MVP actually had 0 receptions for 0 yards week 1, and then started to pick it up. And I've been waiting for this for years. He's one of my favorite draft picks from my favorite team in a while, and that's Mike Gosicki. Mike Gosicki is already midseason he had his highest total in a season was 53 receptions, and this year he already has 40. Not I guess not even halfway through the real NFL season for 475 and 2 touchdowns. Brissett was looking at him. Tua's looking at him. And because I was worried when Tua came back because he didn't look at him as much as Brissett. Brissett really liked him, but now Tua's realizing, hey, he's my best receiver, not named Jalen Waddle. Those two are pretty much head and head, and he's getting good tight end targets. This week was down because of the Bills. I think the Bills linebackers were just queuing in on Gasicki and they weren't moving the ball like this. But he has been a sneaky guy because he's another guy that like James Robinson. You got later in the draft, you weren't getting one of the top 3 tight ends, and then it's basically what the top 3, and then you got Pitts somewhere in between, and then you just sort of threw a dart and choose who you like the best. And but he's been a good value tight end there to get you through. I believe he's like a top 5, top 6 tight end in the league with 2 touchdowns, but he looks bigger. I mean, if you watch him side by side, he is really playing similar to Pitts. Him and Pitts are probably a similar model of player. The bigger guy on the team, they look like a big receiver playing, and the quarterbacks know that if they can get him in there, then they are a good player to hit up. We hope you enjoyed our special midweek, mid-season bonus episode. And as JJ Wang would say, always trust yourself and trust the process.